Very few games come to mind when I think of Armageddon, and even fewer still when I think of Armageddon in a biblical sense. But one game stands out above all others, and that's 2010's release of Darksiders. Published by THQ Nordic, Darksiders offers a fresh take on the age-old story of the apocalypse, with you taking up the mantle of War, one of the four horsemen. And for those who don't know, the four horsemen of the apocalypse are fated to bring about Armageddon, the end of days, the big end to all ends. So needless to say, playing a game from a horseman's perspective is intriguing. The game starts with giving us a description of how heaven and hell have been locked in the eternal war, which through time attracted the attention of the Charred Council, which decreed that any power, good or evil, left unchecked could wipe everything into oblivion, which would be pretty bad. So, both heaven and hell came to an agreement that both sides need to play by the council's rules. The council may have persuaded the parties of heaven and hell into agreement with their enforcers, the ones we have come to know as the four horsemen of the apocalypse. From here, as time passes on, player 3 enters the ring of the eternal conflict, and that's the kingdom of man, who the council, and because of the frailty of mankind, and the council foreseeing that mankind is integral to the balance of the universe, they effectively dropped a ceasefire between heaven and hell, and put 7 seals in place, which are due to break at certain points in time. Once all 7 seals are broken, the eternal conflict may resume, which would be the endgame, to see who would arise as the champion of all 3 kingdoms. Now, let's fast forward to modern day Earth. The sun is shining, it's a lovely day, until it starts raining fire in the form of meteorites. But wait a minute, these aren't exactly meteorites. The eternal conflict is kicked off, and heaven and hell are waging war on Earth.
War? Why don't you introduce yourself?
You kick off the game as War, fully powered and laying waste to angels and demons alike, for none may escape your wrath, and in your wrath form, you can cleave your way through these demonic and divine warriors with ease. That is, of course, until some horn rings, and now you're forced back into a more humanoid form. This part of the game is effectively your tutorial, which is going to get you used to basic combat, movement, and area traversal. It's worth noting as well that this game is designed to be played on a controller, and while you can play this game with a keyboard and mouse, I would 100% recommend hooking in with a controller to get the most optimal experience possible. Now, Darksiders is your typical hack and slash style game, rolled in with puzzles, and to me, it's very similar to the original God of War games launched on PS2 in 2005. Now, what you'll notice right away as you play is that War is a heavy fella. His movements feel weighted. When he drops from high places, you can literally see him shattering the ground he lands on, which is kind of cool, but also something to keep in mind. Don't expect War to be this agile, nimble character to play. He is big, he is bulky, and he packs a hell of a punch. But of course, why shouldn't he be big and bulky? He is the embodiment of war. He's a walking powerhouse. But as you progress through this tutorial level, you'll be met with an enemy you can't handle, and a cutscene will play. Effectively, War has been framed and accused of riding early. Remember those seals I spoke about earlier? Well, the final one isn't broken yet, so the Charred Council is blaming War for the events which took place. Now, you, I, and War know that's utter horseshit. Angels and demons were belting the bejesus out of each other, and War showed up to deliver some punishment to all involved. So, War, not backing down from anything, convinces the Charred Council to let him return to Earth, so he could sort this whole mess out. But at this stage, the Council no longer trusts War at all, so they bind you with a character called the Watcher, who is voiced by none other than the Clown Prince of Gotham, the son of Darth Vader, and the Skeleton Lord of Eternia, Mark Hamill. Now, the Watcher acts as your smart mouth guide in the world, so if you ever get lost or need a sense of direction, you can always summon him and he'll tell you where to go, in more ways than one.
Not so fast, horseman. Let's lay down a few ground rules. Until this is over, you're a dog on a leash. I say bark, you bark. And if I have to kick you, you'd better not bare your teeth. Understand? Or should I teach you to play dead?
So you return to Earth after 100 years have passed from that fateful day, which has seen you wrongly accused, and you're there to right some wrongs, and no angel or demon is going to stand in your way. When you're back on Earth, the only things which remotely resemble human life are these husks, which really serve as nothing more than a sharpening object for War's epic looking sword. Now, it's important to note here that War is no longer this mega powerhouse he was at the start of the game. He's a bit of a shadow of his former self thanks to the Council. So, as you play, War's sword will grow in power, allowing you to deal out more damage as it levels up. What you will notice as you fell enemies in the game, War will start to collect blue, yellow and green orbs shaped like skulls. These are souls, which are broken down as follows. Blue is currency and is to be traded to upgrade War's fighting techniques. Yellow is fury, which allows War to execute high damage moves in the game. And green, well, that's health. Now, to spend the currency of the blue souls, you need to head to a demon called Vulgrim, who is essentially a merchant willing to take those blue souls off your hands in exchange for providing services such as giving you health shards, wrath cores, wrath shards, health cores, and he can even teach War how to make some of his moves even more powerful and provide you with alternate weapons. You can also trade artifacts that you find throughout the game to Vulgrim for more blue souls, which will allow you to purchase more upgrades. As you find more of Vulgrim's location, Vulgrim will eventually give you the ability to pass through his realm so that you can fast travel from store to store in different areas of the game, making traversing the map a little bit easier. Pushing the pause button will bring you through into the character pages, which is divided up into 4 pages. The character page, which shows you the power level of War's weapons, and what relics are allocated to the weapons, and will also show you the amount of lifestone shards and wrath shards you currently have in your collection, along with abyssal armor fragments. You have a gear and wrath page, and this shows you all of your passive abilities which are available and the wrath abilities which War has at his disposal, along with a list of your current consumables and equipment that you have gathered as you play through the game. The weapon forge page gives you the weapons you have along with the enhancement relics that you have allotted into your weapons and legendary relics that you may have. The artifacts page, the artifacts you have found throughout the game, which can all be traded to Vulgrim for more currency to better equip War to deal with the hellscape that Earth now finds itself in. As you play through the game, you're going to meet some significant characters and interact with them to undo the injustice which has been done with the likes of Samael and Azrael, to name a couple that you might be more familiar with. Now, while the story to the game gives you plenty of motive to play and the interactions between characters and cutscenes are amazing, Darksiders does have some issues which could potentially be a deal breaker. For instance, as I was revisiting this game, I found that some of the buttons don't register at times, especially when you need them to. Too often I found myself falling to my death as I was trying to jump across a chasm, only for the game not to respond to the controller input. The other downside is, apart from the puzzles, the game is fairly repetitive in terms of combat, and it doesn't take you as the player long to recognize an area which will block your path until you clear the area of enemies in waves, which gets old pretty fast, and I feel like there is a few too many of these per area that you have to go through in order to slow your progress down. Now, what you might have noticed so far is that the game is about a horseman, but what good is a horseman without his horse? Well, fear not, viewers, about halfway through the game, War is reunited with Ruin, his horse, and you actually need Ruin in order to traverse through certain areas, which is kinda cool. And with Ruin, your attacks deal a whole lot more damage, but you can't use Ruin everywhere. Where in certain areas you can summon Ruin at will, it does diversify travel and combat a little bit, but not freely enough that you have the permanent edge in the game. But all that aside, Darksiders is still a magnificent game, and with the War Master Edition, it has aged really well. Maybe I'm looking at the game through rose-colored lenses, but I'm really not mad about revisiting this game. I have found myself really enjoying sinking back into the story and just reliving how awesome this rendition of the Apocalypse is. So if you're looking for something to play and have this in your collection, it's worth returning to. And if you're looking for a new story of biblical proportions, look no further than Darksiders.